Sex workers on Reddit. What's your approach for special cases of clients, like obviously depressed, sad, sick individuals, etc.? What was the most unfortunate case you've ever encountered and how did it affect you? Story 1. I once had a very sweet young man come to me wanting to lose his virginity. In talking to him, it became clear that he had severe social anxiety and likely some other mental health problems. He had never kissed anyone romantically or gone on a date. He was an immigrant who had never received any sex education from his school or parents. He also didn't have any friends. I felt so sad for him. I told him that I didn't think it was a good idea for his first time having sex to be with someone he just met. I suggested that we just try kissing. He had never seen a vulva before, so I gave a little anatomy lesson. Then I very gently told him that he would probably benefit more from seeing a therapist than an escort at this point in time. Therapy isn't something normal in his culture, so I had to do some convincing. I told him that if he went to therapy for a few months and still wanted to have sex with me, I would do it. He trusted me, and he went to therapy. Several months later, he emailed me and thanked me. He had found a good therapist and was starting to make friends. He was hopeful about finding a girlfriend one day, and had decided he wanted his first time to be special with someone he loved. I couldn't have been happier to lose a client. Story 2. I worked as a male escort on the side for about 2 years to earn some extra income while trying to get a job in another state. No, we don't get lonely housewives and other exotic fantasy stories. I did primarily stripping at parties and very little actual sex. One of my very rare occasions where I was hired for an actual intercourse session was probably one of most interesting times of my life though, and ended up being my last for years. It was a friend of someone I did a party for. The actual client wasn't at the party. Anyway, she was one of those extremely shy introvert girls, a little overweight, kissless virgin who threw her all into her career rather than dating throughout her early 20s. She was nearing 30 and I originally thought that she just wanted to get the virginity thing out of the way. I get to her apartment. There are anime dude posters and I brought up that I used to watch that stuff back in high school. Apparently she was obsessed with shoujo anime. I didn't actually know what that was since I hadn't really followed any of this since Bleach was a thing. We got to talking about anime and Japan in general and all about her favorite genre. She admits she was just going along with her friend on this whole escort thing. I've had that response before, and most of the time it's just a defensive excuse like haha I'd never hire someone, I'm just doing it to make my friends shut up lol. But this one actually felt 100% genuine. Something about this was just way more interesting to me. So instead of striptease, foreplay, a whole bunch of licking, and maybe intercourse like usual with these one-on-one clients, I went ahead and offered to go out to dinner first. Something I've only done maybe 3 times, usually with the really nervous girls, but this time I was genuinely curious. It was awesome to say the least. Once she had a few drinks in her, she wouldn't shut up and I just let her lay into me with all sorts of anime, Japan, travel, even furry stuff. I felt like a high schooler again. But instead of characters going demon form and slicing each other up, it was all this surprisingly interesting romance stories and crazy things I didn't even know existed. Dinner ended, we split the bill, and hopped in the car. On the way back the dam just broke. She completely lost it emotionally. All those lonely years came welling up. Constantly surrounded by these wild romance anime she watches and manga she reads. We get back to her place and just hung out and talked for a while. The idea of it being a session with a client went out the window at that point. We went on a walk around her block, swapped numbers, and called it a night. We dated for about 6 months after that until I finally got the job offer I had been dying for 6 states away. It was a clean breakup. We still chat online sometimes. Her transformation over those months was incredible. She lost weight and we regularly went on bike rides to help. She did end up losing her V-card about 2 weeks in. I don't think she was ever the one, but it was probably one of the most positive relationships I had over the years. I also realized that I broke all the escort rules here, but I wasn't ever serious about it. I don't think you even can be as a guy doing it. I also stopped escorting outside of 1 or 2 in the city I'm at now just for fun. Story 3. When I was 18, I was a phone entertainer. There was one older gentleman who called every Monday without fail. His wife had passed away and they'd never had any children, so he was extremely lonely. He just wanted to talk to someone. I had the option of giving people free minutes, so he got all the minutes I could give. We talked for about half an hour each week. He just wanted someone to talk to and share his life with. He passed away about a year after I started. I never got last names, but our dispatchers did, so when he didn't call one week, I messaged one of the dispatchers to see if she could find anything on him. I got a link to his obituary that day. Turns out, he was just an hour away. I went to that man's funeral and just broke down. His sister was there, and I guess seeing a 19-year-old girl crying like she'd lost everything got to her. I explained what he'd meant to me and how much I would miss the talks we had. She ended up giving me his favorite Carhartt jacket after our talk. I still use it every winter and think about how it felt to talk to him. I'm so grateful for the time I had to know him and I miss him so much. If it weren't for him, I would still be in that relationship, but he gave me the strength and advice I needed to leave. Rip Hooli, I miss you and still have a glass of Johnny Black every year for your birthday. Story 4. A few years ago I had a client book me for a dinner date. During the date, he started crying and told me he just got a divorce. He and I started seeing each other often and I actually met his daughters once. He loved his daughters so much, he loved to cook and would make this cute homemade lunches for them. He had a terrible time sleeping and he would often get drunk because he was trying to dull the pain. For a while he found a girlfriend, but it turned out she just was using him for money. The last time I saw him he was talking about taking a vacation to Mexico. I didn't hear from him again for a while and I figured he must have found someone special. I'm not really sure what compelled me, but I googled him. I found his obituary. To this day it kills me inside because maybe he wasn't really going on vacation. Maybe he meant he was going to kill himself. He died only about a week after the last time I saw him. I feel really guilty and I think of him often. He was a really nice person and I feel terrible that he won't see his daughters grow up. Story 5. I once got a call from a guy asking if my place was handicap accessible. I said yes and he showed up. I opened the door and he wheels in and I asked how he'd like to do it or what he was interested in. Turns out he was paralyzed from the waist down. He said he really enjoyed kissing to start, but that any kind of nipple play drove him crazy. I legit spent an hour sucking and biting this guy's nipples and it drove him crazy. I made my rate with no actual penetration and he seemed so very pleased to find someone willing to just suck on his nipples. Best appointment ever. I've also had a guy that messaged me saying he wanted to get to know me. This usually means he wants to bone for free and is trying to play my emotions to achieve this. But this guy was really just a lonely dude that worked too much and didn't have time for romance. I went to his place and just laid on his bed and talked for the entire time. I ended up doing this several times and felt really good about being able to be the someone he could just sit and talk to. Eventually, he wanted it to go sexual, which was fine, but then he started cheaping out on me because we're friends. Story 6. I worked as a pro dom many years ago, and there was one particular session that I'll always remember. The gentleman was in his 40s or 50s, and initially he just said he wanted a spanking session. During our negotiation right beforehand, he told me it was important to him that I bring him to tears. He broke about 45 minutes into the session, and it was like a dam breaking. He sobbed and hyperventilated and wailed while I held him, stroking his hair and soothing him and whispering reassuring things for nearly an hour. When he eventually calmed down enough to talk, he told me that his mother had died suddenly 5 years before, and that despite being devastated by it, he hadn't been able to cry, not once. His grief had been trapped inside for all that time. He couldn't let go enough to express it before that day. He called me about once a week for several months after, just to thank me again, and each time he sounded brighter, happier. By the last time we talked, he sounded like a completely different person than the man I had met. It was wonderful to see him blossom. It's not a job I would ever return to, but that experience with him made the entire job worth it. Story 7. So I should probably use a throwaway, but fuck it. I was a sugar baby in my early 20s as a way to make extra cash. It wasn't necessarily a pay-for-sex type agreement, more of a mutually beneficial relationship where I would get gifts and an allowance in return for a no-strings-attached girlfriend and boyfriend type relationship. Anyhow, a guy had seen my profile and asked me out on a date. First date went well. He was shy and awkward and ugly if we're being honest, but was incredibly kind and polite. He didn't try anything sexual, and that was a good sign for me cause most guys are just in for that, which isn't my deal. Second date, I agreed to go to his house to watch a movie. When I showed up, he explained that his wife had recently left him. She had cancer for 4 years and he was her main caretaker, and after she was cured up, she left him for a much younger man. He asked if I would wear his wife's robe and jewelry and perfume, which was very sad but also extremely creepy. He showed me pictures of their wedding and vacations, and he talked about how he wanted kids and never had them cause she didn't. It was so sad. After that night, I cut ties. I told him it seems his heart was too broken and he was just lonely, but I didn't want to have him pay me for companionship. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to check out our other content on our channel. Until next time.